I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. Chapter 20. Akabaka soda cracker, akibaki boo, akabaki soda cracker, I'm in love with you. The sound of tag beat through the trees while the top branches waved in contrapuntal rhythms. I lay in a moment of green grass and telescoped the children's game in my vision. The girls ran about wild, now here, now there, never here, never was. They seemed to have no more direction than a splattered egg. But it was a shared, if seldom voiced, knowledge that all movements fitted and worked according to a larger plan. I raised a platform for my mind's eye and marveled down on the outcome of Akabaka. The gay picnic dresses dashed, stopped and darted like beautiful dragonflies over a dark pool. The boys, black whips in the sunlight, popped behind the trees where their girls had fled, half hidden and throbbing in the shadows. The summer picnic fish fry in the clearing by the pond was the biggest outdoor event of the year. Everyone was there. All churches were represented, as well as the social groups. The Elks, Eastern Star Masons, Knights of Columbus, Daughters of Pythias. Professional people, Negro teachers from Lafayette County, and all the excited children. Musicians brought cigar box guitars, harmonicas, juice harps, combs wrapped in tissue paper, and even bathtub bases. The amount and variety of foods would have found approval on the menu of a Roman epicure. Pans of fried chicken, covered with dish towels, sat under the benches next to a mountain of potato salad crammed with hard-boiled eggs. Whole rust-red sticks of bologna were clothed in cheesecloth. Homemade pickles and chow-chow and baked country ham, aromatic with cloves and pineapples, vied for prominence. Our steady customers had ordered cold watermelons, so Bailey and I chugged the striped green fruit into the Coca-Cola box and filled all the tubs with ice, as well as the big black washpot that Mama used to boil her laundry. Now they too lay sweating in the happy afternoon air. The summer picnic gave ladies a chance to show off their baking hands. On the barbecue pit, chickens and spare ribs sputtered in their own fat, and a sauce whose recipe was guarded in the family like a scandalous affair. However, in the ecumenical light of the summer picnic, every true baking artist could reveal her prize to the delight and criticism of the town. Orange sponge cakes and dark brown mounds dripping Hershey's chocolate stood layer to layer with ice white coconuts and light brown caramels. Pound cakes sagged with their buttery weight, and small children could no more resist licking the icings than their mothers could avoid slapping their sticky fingers. Proven fishermen and weekend amateurs sat on the trunks of trees at the pond. They pulled the struggling bass and the silver perch from the swift water. A rotating crew of young girls scaled and cleaned the catch, and busy women in starched aprons salted and rolled the fish. And I did this before. I'm not going to stop this time. Rolled the fish. Don't know why I did that. In cornmeal. Then dropped them in Dutch ovens, trembling with boiling flat. On one corner of the clearing, a gospel group was rehearsing. Their harmony, packed as tight as sardines, floated over the music of the country singers and melted into the songs of the small children's ring games. Boys, don't you let that ball fall on none of my cakes. You do and it'll be me on you. Yes, ma'am, and nothing changed. The boys continued hitting the tennis ball with palings, snatched from a fence, and running holes in the ground, colliding with everyone. I had wanted to bring something to read, But Mama said if I didn't want to play with the other children, I could make myself useful by cleaning fish or bringing water from the nearest well or wood for the barbecue. I wandered into a retreat by accident. Signs with arrows around the barbecue pit pointed men, women, children toward the fading lines grown over since last year. Feeling ages old and very wise at 10, I couldn't allow myself to be found by small children squatting behind a tree. Neither did I have the nerve to follow the arrow pointing the way for women. If any grown-up had caught me there, it was possible that she'd think I was being womanish or would report me to Mama. And I knew that I could expect what I could expect from her. So when the urge hit me to relieve myself, I headed towards another direction. Once through the wall of sycamore trees, I found myself in a clearing 10 times smaller than the picnic area and cool and quiet. After my business was taken care of, I found a seat between two protruding roots of a black walnut tree and leaned back on its trunk. Heaven would be like that for the deserving. Maybe California too. Looking straight up at the uneven circle of sky, I began to sense that I might be falling into a blue cloud far away. The children's voices and the thick odor of food cooking over open fires were the hooks I grabbed just in time to save myself. Grass squeaked, and I jumped at being found. Louise Kendricks walked into my grove. I didn't know that she too was escaping the gay spirit. We were the same age, and she and her mother lived in a neat little bungalow behind the school. Her cousins, who were in our age group, were wealthier and fairer, but I had secretly believed Louise to be the prettiest female in Stamps, next to Mrs. Flowers. "What you doing sitting here by yourself, Marguerite?" She didn't accuse. She asked for information. I said that I was watching the sky. She asked, "What for?" There was obviously no answer to a question like that, so I didn't make one up. Louise reminded me of Jane Eyre. Her mother lived in reduced circumstances, but she was genteel, and though she worked as a maid, I decided she should be called a governess and did so to Bailey and myself. Who could teach a romantic, dreamy 10-year-old to call a spade a spade? Mrs. Kendricks could not have been very old, but to me all people were over 18 were adults, and there could be no degrees given or taken. They had to be catered to and pampered with politeness. They had to stay on the same category of look-alike, sound-alike, and being-alike. Louise was a lonely girl, though she had plenty of playmates and was a ready partner for any ring game in the schoolyard. Her face, which was long and dark chocolate brown, had a thin sheen of sadness over it, as light but as permanent as the viewing gauze on a coffin. And her eyes, which I thought her best feature, shifted quickly, as if what they sought had just a second before eluded her. And that didn't read very well. And her eyes, which I thought her best feature, shifted quickly, as if what they sought had just a second before eluded her. She had come near, and the spotted light through the trees fell on her face in braids and running splotches. I had never noticed before, but she looked exactly like Bailey. Her hair was good, more straight than kinky, and her features had the regularity of objects placed by a careful hand. She looked up. "Well, you can't see much sky from here." Then she sat down an arm away from me. Finding two exposed roots, she laid thin wrists on them as if she had been in an easy chair. Slowly, she leaned back against the tree. I closed my eyes and thought of the necessity of finding another place and the unlikelihood of there being another with all the qualifications this one had. There was a little peal of a scream, and before I could open my eyes, Louise had grabbed my hand. I was falling. She shook her long braids. I was falling in the sky. I liked her for being able to fall in the sky and admitted. I suggest, let's try it together. Let's try together. But we have to sit up straight on the count of 5. Louise asked, Want to hold hands just in case? I did. If one of us did happen to fall, the other could pull her out. After a few near tumbles into eternity, both of us knew what it was. We laughed at having played with death and destruction and escaped. Louise said, "Let's look at that old sky while we're spinning." We took each other's hands in the center of the clearing and began turning around. Very slowly at first, we raised our chins, looked straight up at the seductive patch of blue. Faster, just a little faster, then faster, faster yet. Yes, help, we were falling. Then eternity won after all. We couldn't stop spinning or falling until I was jerked out of her grasp by greedy gravity and thrown to my fate below. No, above, not below. I found myself safe and dizzy at the foot of the sycamore tree. Louise had ended on her knees at the other side of the grove. This was surely the time to laugh. We lost, but we hadn't lost anything. First, we were giggling and crawling drunkenly towards each other, and then we were laughing out loud, uproariously. We slapped each other on the back and shoulders and laughed some more. We'd made a fool or a liar out of something, and didn't that just beat all? In daring to challenge the unknown with me, she became my first friend. We spent tedious hours teaching ourselves the Tut language. You, Yakko you. No. Kaknugawug. What? Wakashatut. Since all the other children spoke pig Latin, we were superior because Tut was hard to speak and even harder to understand. At last I began to comprehend what the girls giggled about. Louise would rattle off a few sentences to me in the unintelligible Tut language and would laugh. Naturally, I laughed too, snickered really, understanding nothing. I don't think she understood half of what she was saying herself, but after all, girls have to giggle, and after being a woman for 3 years, I was about to become a girl. In school one day, a girl whom I barely knew, by the way, she's talking about the tragic thing that happened to her in St. Louis, so she was going to become a girl finally. In school one day, a girl whom I barely knew and scarcely spoken to brought me a note. The intricate fold indicated that it was a love note. I was sure she had the wrong person, but she insisted. Picking the paper loose, I confessed to myself that I was frightened. Suppose it was somebody being funny. Suppose the paper would show a hideous beast and the word "you" written on it. Children did that sometimes just because they claimed I was stuck up. Fortunately, I had got permission to go to the toilet, an outside job, and in the reeking gloom I read, "Dear friend MJ, times are hard and friends are few. I take great pleasure in writing you. Will you be my Valentine? Tommy Valdon." I pulled my mind apart. Who was Tommy Valdon? Finally, a face dragged itself from my memory. He was the nice-looking, brown-skinned boy who lived across the pond. As soon as I had pinned him down, I began to wonder, why me? Was it a joke? But if Tommy was the boy I remembered, he was a very sober person and a good student. Well then, it wasn't a joke. All right, what evil, dirty things did he have in mind? My questions fell over themselves, an army in retreat. Haste, dig for cover, protect your flanks. Don't let the enemy close the gap between you. What did a Valentine do anyway? Starting to throw the paper in the foul-smelling hole, I thought of Louise. I could show it to her. I folded the paper back in the original creases and went back to class. There was no time during the lunch period since I had to run to the store and wait on customers. The note was in my sack, and every time Mama looked at me, it was in my sock, and every time Mama looked at me, I feared that her church gaze might have turned into X-ray vision, and she could not only see the note and read its message, but would interpret it as well. I felt myself slipping down a sheer cliff of guilt. And a second time I nearly destroyed the note, but there was no opportunity. The take-up bell rang, and Bailey raced me to the school, so the note was forgotten. But serious business is serious, and it had to be attended to. After classes, I waited for Louise. She was talking to a group of girls laughing, but when I gave her our signal, 2 waves of the left hand, she said goodbye to them and joined me in the road. I didn't give her the chance to ask what was on my mind, her favorite question. I simply gave her the note. Recognizing the fold, she stopped smiling. We were in deep waters. She opened the letter and read aloud twice. Well, what do you think? I said, what do you think? That's what I'm asking you. What is there to think? Looks like he wants you to be his Valentine. Louise, I can read, but what does that mean? Oh, you know, his Valentine, his love. There was that hateful word again, that treacherous word that yawned up at you like a volcano. Well, I won't. Most decidedly, I won't. Not ever again. Have you been his Valentine before? What do you mean, never again? I couldn't lie to my friend, and I wasn't about to freshen old ghosts. Well, don't answer about him then. Well, don't answer him then, and that's the end of it. I was a little relieved that she thought it should be gotten rid of so quickly. I tore the note in half and gave her a part. Walking down the hill, we minced the paper in 1,000 shreds and gave it to the wind. 2 days later, a monitor came into my class. She spoke quietly to Miss Williams, our teacher. Miss Williams said, "Class, I believe you remember that tomorrow is Valentine's Day, so named for Saint Valentine the Martyr, who died around AD 270 in Rome. The day is observed by exchanging tokens of affection and cards. The 8th grade children have completed theirs, and the monitor is acting as mailman. You'll be given cardboard, ribbon, and red tissue paper during the last period today so that you can make your gifts. Glue and scissors are here at the work table. Now stand when your name is called." She had been shuffling the colored envelopes and calling names for some time before I noticed. I had been thinking of yesterday's plain invitation and the expeditious way Louise and I took care of it. We who were being called to receive Valentines were only slightly more embarrassed than those who sat and watched as Miss Williams opened each envelope. Helen Gray, a tall, dull girl from Louisville, flinched. "Dear Valentine," Miss Williams began to read the badly rhymed childish drivel. I seethed with shame and anticipation, yet had time to be offended at the silly poetry that I could have bettered in my sleep. "Marguerite Ann Johnson." My goodness, this looks like a letter, more like a letter than a Valentine. "Dear friend, I wrote you a letter and saw you tear it up with your friend, Miss L. I don't believe you meant to hurt my feelings, so whether you answer or not, you will always be my Valentine. TV. Class." Miss Williams smirked and continued lazily without giving us permission to sit down. "Although you're only in the 7th grade, I'm sure you wouldn't be so presumptuous as to sign a letter with an initial. But here is a boy in the 8th grade about to graduate, blah, blah, bluey, blah, blah. Blah, blah, bluey, blah. You may collect your Valentines and these letters on your way out." It was a nice letter, and Tommy had beautiful penmanship. I was sorry I tore up the first one. It's a long chapter. And I read 9 minutes before I screwed it up before. So. His statement that whether I answered him or not would not influence his affection reassured me. He couldn't be after you-know-what if he talked like that. I told Louise that the next time he came to the store, I was going to say something extra nice to him. Unfortunately, the situation was so wonderful to me that each time I saw Tommy, I melted in delicious giggles and was unable to form a coherent sentence. After a while, he stopped including me in his general glances.